And I get together probably every 6 months or so and talk about all the things that are changing. Every once in a while, I'll send them a property and say, what do you think about this, whatever, and it's always a great conversation. What I will say about this is one of the reasons why we waited until now. We'd actually hoped to do this in October, but we waited for the new law to be passed because this is not a policy conversation. This is what just passed in January, and then how we can expect it to be implemented. So we want to keep it interesting to West Seattle. We want to talk about what is. Robert came up with the idea. Robert Kelly from our office is back here. He's our stats guy. Keeps our blog somewhat fresh with great stats information. But about a year ago, he came up with a topic for our blog that was like, how can they build that? Just the question. Like, so many people are like, what is this thing that's going up in the neighborhood? And sometimes we know and sometimes we don't. Right now, it seems like a lot of the stuff that's happening is so new. And especially going into this change, I think you can talk about this. Like, when they passed the change in zoning on January 21st, they had so many addendums that they were still considering the day that they passed it, that it was like, we really didn't know what we were gonna get. So people even ask us, and we're like, yeah, we gotta have another meeting with Matt so we can figure out what's going on. But there'll be different spots where Matt's got a great presentation. We'll leave lots of time for questions, and then Tracy's also here from our office. Tracy and Robert and I will probably jump in here and there and talk about how this manifests itself in the real estate market and what we see with those trends. But we'll try and keep the conversation pretty loose. Let Matt go for about a half an hour, and then start to get everybody's hot questions. I hope you boned up on the lumberyard, because apparently that's the hot issue on the blog today.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. Tracy set you up for failure on this one.
Great. I did not read about the lumberyard, but I was on the design review board back when it actually, when we passed it. Let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, just a little bit about me. So I am an architect. I'm a principal at Cast Architecture. I also am the co-chair of the Planning Commission, and have been on the Planning Commission for the last 5 years, which coincidentally is not long enough to see the whole comprehensive plan through, unfortunately. Before that, I was, as I mentioned, on the design review board here in West Seattle. Before that, was part of the effort to allow backyard cottages throughout Seattle. First in 2009, and then again culminating in 2019, where the biggest changes really manifest. So I have a kind of a long history of housing advocacy through through my experience, my first-hand experience with zoning as an architect. And 2 years ago, I kind of made the jump to also doing my own development. But out in Spokane, where the living is a little bit easier to get things started, and we'll see we'll see who's one of those projects today. So I like to start with this conversation just because change can be really scary, but the idea really, Seattle's growing. There are a lot of places that aren't. There are a lot of places that would kill for the kind of growth that we have, the economic activity that we have. But it's really our opportunity to change the city and make it into the city that we really want. So these zoning rules, they seem like they're kind of part of the woodwork, part of the bureaucracy. But we really can, over time, change them into the kind of the urban design that we want to see. And that's part of what I've been doing, and part of what I'm hopefully you'll all be empowered to do is to look around the city and think about how, if there's, like, what can we do better and how to apply that. So, this thing,
oh my gosh.
I'll be talking way too much between slides. So,
Keep it alive.
there we go. All right, next slide. Okay, so just an overview of some of the stuff we're going to talk about. Where we are in the process, because things aren't done, and you may have arrived late and not you, and not know what's happened in the past. So a little bit of an overview. And then I also want to talk about how our demographics are changing, because that's going to shape our future market. And then I also want to talk about the kind of the ambiguity in the discourse about what does affordable mean. Everyone thinks that we need more affordable housing, but that's different to different people. And how do we achieve affordable housing for lots more people? And what does that look like? Then I'm going to touch on new opportunities in neighborhood residential, because the zoning there is very, very different. And then kind of forecast to the one thing that is happening in the planning world in Seattle right now, which is the centers and corridors legislation, and just talk a little bit about that, especially the impact, because that's under review right now and will get voted on sometime in the next 3 months, something like that. So, oh great. All right, this is a little bit light, but what you can see are 4 maps of Seattle. And I just want to highlight, so going left to right, all the areas in kind of that peach, those are what is now called neighborhood residential. That's formerly single family. All the areas in blue are on the second map. These are the new neighborhood centers. These are smaller nodes of higher density and mixed-use buildings. The next one over there is the urban villages. This is the plan that we've had basically since the 1990s. These are our major urban villages, like where we are right now, and the Junction, Morton Junction, and then all of the Rainier Valley, etc. And then the last one. These are almost like downtowns. So downtown for sure, but also like in the U District where we have high rises. Ballard is undergoing the process of allowing much higher heights, and also Northgate. So those, so we spent 4 years thinking about neighborhood residential. We're going to spend this year thinking about neighborhood centers, and then next year we're going to start biting off all those like kind of sub-area plans of all those centers. So, yeah, a little bit, yeah. Okay.
Do those become a reality with amendments to the comprehensive plan?
Let's see. Basically, that's in part why they're staged the way that they are, because we can only amend the comprehensive plan once per year. So you kind of have like a big slush fund of all these changes that all have to like happen at once. So let's see, next one. Okay. Just so we understand what the current plan is, I know you don't have to take a picture of the slide, it doesn't matter that much, but in each one of those areas, there are projections for how much housing we have, how much development capacity, like if everything that could be built got built. And then in orange, we have what they actually think is going to happen. And so, and that's by those different categories. So you can see urban neighborhood, that's actually, it's neighborhood residential, that they're only expecting 25,000 new units of housing over the next 20 years. But you can see that in urban centers, all those, and regional centers, that's 3/4 of our projected growth over the next 20 years. So even though we spent a long time thinking about neighborhood residential, the macro change is still going to be in urban centers and regional centers. Okay. All right, so today we have more than 800,000 people in Seattle, and in 20 years we'll have more than 1 million. What does that mean? When I first figured this out, I was like kind of a little bit shocked, because I don't think of Seattle as being a big city, but we are getting there. We're growing gangbusters, and we have for the last basically 2 decades.
Why?
Why?
Why are we growing?
Well, we have a really unique mix of industries. We've got a beautiful state, and I think our politics help quite a bit. So, and our tax structure
Or taxation.
also contributes to that. So, so there's lots of different things that are operating. It's kind of a delicate equation that has, by luck of the draw, we're kind of living in this period in Seattle of incredible growth. So,
It's really interesting. It's one of my favorite points that came up last year when we did this, when Matt was talking about it, is, yeah, we hear about the Californians moving up for jobs and taxation purposes or whatever, but the climate is a huge part of that. We're just a much more, like, if you spent time in California during the summers with the wildfires and stuff, it's, the climate is changing enough where people aren't desiring that anymore. I have an 18-year-old who's getting ready to go to college, and we drove through Southern California looking at schools 2 days before the Palisades fire started. And just to think about those neighborhoods that we were driving through just being gone is really, it's a huge deal.
yeah. Actually, no one is safe. We tend to think that our climate is going to be some sort of protection, but what we'll experience is already I'm designing buildings for not our climate, because our buildings are going to be around for 50 years, but Sacramento's climate. So hotter, drier, and so when we think about our climate, our trees, there's going to be I don't think about I think about planting different trees now because I want them to be around in 2045. Demographically, some things are changing. One, in general, we are forming households much later, and there are fewer households being formed. So part of this is the tamping down of immigration, but it's also people just getting married later and deciding to get together later. So all the housing units that you might expect, there's less demand nationally. We're also having households with fewer kids. I know we see this in Seattle for sure, but now there are more households with adult kids and also more households with aging parents. So this kind of mix of generations and sort of fluidity between all these household types. There is no nuclear family anymore. It's lots of different ways that you might live together with a family.
It's really interesting. The average age of a first-time home buyer last year was 36. This year it was, Tracy, where are you? What was it this year, 40?
Yeah, I heard 38.
38.
Yeah.
Highest
Yeah.
it's ever been 2 years in a row. So that's part of this.
Yeah. And I think also one thing that we when we're thinking about those demographics is fewer and fewer people are able to afford a house. And so Seattle is majority renter, more renter households than owner households. That trend is just going to continue. So I think that the thought that we need to be starting with more ownership housing doesn't necessarily hold true. There may not be as much market for that. So, okay. So, what is affordable housing? I put it into kind of two camps. Capital A, affordable housing, which is subsidized housing. That is, it's what nonprofit providers build. It's where the public is essentially reducing the cost of housing, either through the construction or through subsidies on rent, and it tends to work at a certain scale. So it doesn't work in a small building, it doesn't work in a building this big. It has to be sort of bigger in order to make sense, because the process has so many strings attached that in order to get that money to reduce the cost, you have to build at a certain scale. So on the left, you've got capital A affordable housing. 5, 6-story buildings that often have with it some sort of ground floor that is an early learning center or some sort of social services, like where we're co-locating services for the community that lives upstairs. Versus little a affordable housing, which I think most people, when they're looking at like, how can they sell a DAU for $750 million? That's not affordable. That is just less expensive. It's less expensive than any house on the market. But is it attainable for most people? Not necessarily. So, next slide. So big A, affordable, capital A, affordable, subsidized. Little a is just less expensive by nature of its age, by its size, by the type. So flats, condos, DADUs, they're just smaller. They subdivide them, the amount of land, the cost of the land across more people, and are therefore less expensive.
I'm going to jump in really quick. Robert's done a really good job the last 2 years tracking the number of homes in West Seattle. It's been on average between 25 and 30% of the homes on the market in West Seattle for the last 2 years have been backyard cottages. It is really skewing the numbers. It is very, like, we actually had a thing, we were talking about it, I think in September, where, there's a couple different people that are blogging about or, commenting on the state of the market, and the Seattle Times industry professional that blogs regularly that I follow, and Robert, and I think there was one other organization, all had very different takes on what was happening in the marketplace, because we're having a harder time tracking what's actually being built, and then also what's being absorbed, right? We've reached kind of a glut of the backyard cottages being sold, and those prices are actually coming down, while traditional single-family homes continue to stay in exceedingly high demand. This is, and the relative pricing of these has changed a lot.
Okay, I wanted to bring up this idea also of something that I hear quite often is like, well, the new development that was just built in my neighborhood is so much more expensive than the house next door. You like see a house go on the market for $700, and then they tear it down, and then they build for $700,000, DAUs effectively. Like, how did that? The economics of that shouldn't necessarily make sense. And then the corollary to that is like, well, are we actually providing any affordable housing by doing these upzones if the only thing they're building is the most expensive thing on the market? And the answer is yes, because what happens is it's this idea of vacancy chains. So as new buildings come on the market, people move from, they move to improve their housing. And if they move, and then the house or the flat or whatever it was that they were living in becomes open for someone else to move into, and so on and so on. And so these vacancy chains where people are moving up the chain can extend like 6 or 7 rungs down the housing sort of spectrum. So it's one thing that we also call it like filtering. Like older houses are less expensive. Think about it like a car, right? You buy a new car, you expect to pay more than a used car, and it's the same way with housing. Every new unit is going to be more expensive than one that was built 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Next one. So results from a recent study, just about one 500-unit building in Honolulu. The researcher was able to measure to see who all moved in, where they moved from, who moved into their place, and then where did those people move from. And what he found was that expensive new building was renting for $1,152 per square foot. And so the person moved into that, then freed up, they were paying $715 per square foot. And so they moved up into a higher echelon, higher quality of housing, making space for someone to move up. And so what happens is suddenly, building up here creates vacancies down there. So this is just after 2 cycles. But imagine this continues. So go to the next slide. So another sort of like study recently done, oops,
That one?
recently done that looked at hundreds of apartment buildings and did a more broad sort of broad study looking back 6 or 7 of these chains. It meant that for every 100 new units of housing at the high end, it created 45 to 70 vacancies at below market value. So building expensive stuff counterintuitively helps us with really creating spaces for affordable housing, for attainable, less expensive housing. So, okay. All right, so a little bit about what's changing with the zoning. I just want to, here's Seattle's current zoning map, or this is the draft of what's happening right now. So you'll see those same peach areas. Well, you'll see there's a lot more of these brown and orange kind of strings that connect, but then everything that was on the old map that was blue, those are all not shown on this map, because what it's showing is how zoning is changing to accommodate these new neighborhood centers. So in our neck of the woods, what's happening, highlight some of this stuff, I can't really point at stuff, but you can see in the light blue, like all those are new neighborhood centers. And around our regional our urban centers, like Admiral, it's kind of grown a little bit. So you can see over here, this is the Admiral urban center. Everything that is kind of in this brown hatch around that are changes to the current zoning. Everything in that sort of void in the middle, that's the old zoning of the neighborhood center, and it hasn't changed at all. So, but you know, now West Seattle High School is zoned LR3, but you know that doesn't matter much. But if you live, you know, on the like west slope here, and you're within a couple blocks of the older neighborhood center, chances are your zoning went from NR, single family, or what was single family 10 years ago, to something as low rise, which in theory is like townhouses and apartments. So everything has kind of grown a little bit. And then if you see that pink outline, those are areas that from their last plan in 2024, when it was really draft, to the current proposal that will become law, they've cut out a bunch of areas. Probably it's like 20%, something like that. So they've like dialed back how much change they're going to propose. So, but you can see there's, you know, the other thing that I want to highlight, those kind of long lines like connecting like West Seattle to you know, Morgan Junction. There's like now higher zoning along the corridors. So part of what they're doing in order to give more people access to transit, these are along basically all of our high frequency transit lines. Those are getting an extra bump. So,
Question.
yeah.
So why did they retreat? Why did they contract? And those-
No idea. That's
That's
not.
Community feedback.
Yeah.
Why did they retract
That's
that?
Yeah.
The extension,
Yeah.
was it a pink, why did they move
So
that?
it's the vocal locals.
Vocal locals, yes. Yeah.
City council vote, listening to them and voting to reduce it. Yeah.
I
But
think there
I
are
think it
some
was all
areas in
negotiation.
Seattle that are a little higher price, and they really pushed for the consolidation. Like,
Yeah.
not so much in Admiral, but if you went to Capitol Hill or Northeast Seattle, right? Like they tried to
there is always this inequity of who has access and who can sort of make the most noise.
Do you know, is there a trade-off, like if the community kind of didn't let the low rise go out, they allowed more density in these darker areas? Or
No, that
they
really
just said
didn't.
no,
Well, I mean, all those darker areas, all those brown areas
I
are.
was just wondering if there was a trade-off, right? So the community said, we don't want it to go out that far. If you don't go out this far, then, you know, what if you guys just went higher in the other areas?
That didn't happen in this process, but the thought is, you know, where there's no color, like the center
Yeah,
of the lollipop,
was the old.
yeah,
Yeah.
those are gonna be planned next, in the next 2 years.
Oh, so that
So,
might, they
so
might
then
be
that
right
is,
there.
yeah, that is probably gonna happen.
Okay.
So,
So that may have been what the council was doing, because this area is so close to everything.
yeah,
I can't imagine the city letting them get away with that.
It's really interesting. I mean, I'd love to look at the new, what are they called, urban centers? Have really, I mean, they really happened very organically, right? Like the little village that happened around 35th where the local and Westie and stuff like that, those have all happened really kind of naturally. And it's been great for the neighborhood to have, for those places to grow and now be, like the growth to be fostered a little bit. For me, this always comes back to, again, I have 2 teenagers. I'll never forget when my girls were like 8, we had, I think somebody gave one of my kids a magic 8-ball as kind of a gag gift, like, what are you gonna do with this thing? And we witnessed our kids playing with magic 8-ball, they had a friend over, and an 8-year-old looked at the magic 8-ball and said, is light rail gonna be built in my lifetime? And flipped the magic 8-ball over, and the answer was something like, the future is cloud or something like that. It shocked me that, you know, kids less than 10 were talking about it, that they cared about it, and now that the kids are teenagers and talking about going off to college somewhere and whatever, I literally witnessed conversations, again, organic, not seeded by me or anybody else. I mean, they overhear plenty of real estate conversations to a fault, I promise you. But hearing them talk about like whether they'll ever get to move back and be part of this community that they love so much it's really interesting. It's been something that you know, people are super invested in their home, and there are people who are like, I bought this with the expectation that I was gonna have neighbors like, you know, this, and you buy in a neighborhood, but like Matt started with, change is hard, and I think that, you know, I think for the most part, it's been pretty respectful that the change has been continuous, and maybe not as drastic as some of the proposals, but it is happening, and I think it's happening for the right reasons, and it's been a steady march.
it's happening too slow. Knowing how long it takes to develop anything, it's happening, in my mind, too slow. The original map that shows where those neighborhood centers, little dots on the map, is from 1957. So there was, before we even had a comprehensive plan process, there was an acknowledgement of these organic little neighborhood centers, that they were places that were anchors for that community. And it's only now, you know, 80 years later, that we're getting around to actually providing the zoning for those things to grow into more than just a coffee shop and a bookstore.
I know.
All right, next, see where we're going here. Okay, so neighborhood residential, lots and lots of changes, and rather than get into the nitty gritty, I'm just going to give you the high level here. So everything is kind of dependent on the type of housing that you are looking to build, and then the density. And so if you are building, or if you're interested in like townhomes, then it's 1 unit, 1 townhome per 1,250 square feet of lot area. So that is essentially on a 5,000 square foot lot, our average lot, that is 4 townhomes. So, but if you have a bigger lot, then that grows. If you have, you know, a massive lot, of course that can be much higher, but it's still an even density. As soon as you, and backyard cottages count towards that density too. So there's no more of this where you have townhouses and then you have two ADUs that are free. Those are now folded into that conversation, or into that calculation. But as soon as you pivot from townhouses or anything that is like you're building from ground to sky, as soon as you start doing flats, then there's just a whole different way of approaching everything about it. FAR, floor area ratio, the amount of square footage you can build compared to your lot size, lot coverage, density, they all are built to incentivize stacked flats. So those are the small apartment buildings that have not been built for the most part for 80 years. We see them all over the neighborhood, but they mostly pre-exist or modern zoning. So in order to get places where my children are going to be able to afford to live, we're going to have to build a lot more apartments. And part of what NR zoning now does is create incentives for that. Setbacks vary for density, so if you just have a big McMansion, your setbacks are greater. You have bigger setbacks. If you're building 3 units, then you have smaller setbacks. That applies to DADUs as well, because they are counted as units, and so you suddenly, if you're building a DADU, it used to be that you could be within 5 feet of the rear yard setback, but now if it's one of your principal unit and your DADU, it's only 2 units, that is subject to greater setbacks. It reduces the incentive to have lower density on parcels. So we're still going to see lots of 3-packs, but now with the density dropping or going up a little bit, these 3 are going to become 4. So we're going to see configurations where we have 4 individual cottages. When I say cottages, I just think modest houses that are probably 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, 2 or 3 stories. I think South Park became slightly famous for lots of these with really marginal space between them. DADUs, another piece of legislation, bumped up the size of those, so now those can be, when you add it all up to 1,435 square feet. So, I'm sorry, 1,485. So pretty big, and as big as most townhomes. The height, this is it went up 2 feet for townhouses, stacked flats, and depending on how you the various kind of bonuses, you can go up to 42 feet. So an extra story in certain conditions. Parking, actually, let's go back 1 slide. Let's see, 2 slides maybe? No, I'll go forward, I'm sorry. This map on the right is, the blue areas are where the city thinks the most of these projects are gonna happen. So they really think that, in the northeast, that's where we're gonna see the most of these backyard cottage combinations here.
Are row houses allowed?
Row houses are still allowed as townhouses, but they don't achieve the true kind of row house template because there's always side yard setbacks. So the side yard setbacks are still what they have been because we haven't changed the low-rise zoning quite yet. That's in this next thing. So you still are going to have these, 3 in a row and then a gap, and then 3 in a row and then a gap.
Why do they have gas?
That I would love. We can. that I want to get rid of.
Yeah, because everybody loves row houses.
Because fire departments write building codes.
it's yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
We're going to see a lot of duplexes because a lot of lots are confined having that extra space between two essentially townhouse units doesn't necessarily make sense. So not only are duplexes gonna be much, I think, much more popular. I think the city already allows kind of pre-approved backyard cottages, but they're gonna open up the door also to a new competition amongst architects to design the best backyard duplex. So that's also coming. These are all variants on townhouses. Part of satisfying this kind of like, we have lots of clients who are building a house for two households, and they tend to be multi-generational, where, and it's younger families with younger, another generation of parents. So this is, for example, a house where it's really hard to tell, that it's two houses for two separate families, but it's kind of split right down the middle. But of course, it's grandma, and so she has a private door through the middle. But we're going to see more creative housing like that.
And then are those limited by the FAR and the setbacks and all of those rules?
Yep.
Not value rules.
Yeah, this is the macro unit rules. So
It's really, I love to jump in on this. I actually have a house closing tomorrow where it's a mutual friend of ours did a attached ADU, a senior-friendly apartment in their basement. And it ended up being, like, I did the open houses, and everybody would come in and say, like, this is awesome. I don't know how I would use this. I don't know if I want to have tenants underneath me. Whatever, it's fascinating. And Robert and I had a listing on the beach last year where it was a perfect, absolutely amazing situational up and down residence, perfect for seniors, on Beach Drive, 2 distinct units, and people would come in and they'd just be like, this is great. And I just don't know. The buyers for both are perfect use cases, right? But it took us a hard time to find them, and our industry is struggling with how to market these because they're new and the market's changed in a way that, like, they're hard to find, and like the market literally hasn't come of age to accept these in a way that is kind of commonplace. It's really interesting. I literally found myself saying, like, people would come look at the house and be like, this is great, and I'd be like, go down and check out the apartment, let me know what you think. And then, of course, they don't come back because they're 2 entirely separate units. But like it's just surprising, and I feel like in both cases, the buyers got an incredible deal on a property that Seattle is growing toward and growing into in a way that people just don't appreciate the value of that today. It's impacting the market.
So who bought them?
One was.
Or what was the profile of the?
So the profile, the one on the beach was great. It both had level entry going into the lower unit or into the lower units. The people that bought the unit that was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths up and 2 bedrooms, 2 baths below, they had an adult disabled daughter who was wheelchair bound, and it was like, when they saw that house, they were like, there's nothing else like this for us, and they had to have it. Even though we'd already been on the market 2 months, they were just like, this is like the perfect situation. And, playing matchmaker with that buyer and seller is amazing, because like these people felt like they won the lottery, perfect house. The people that bought the other one right over here, parents that are moving to town to be closer to grandkids, it's a huge part of our market right now. So many 30-year-olds have relocated for jobs here, and now the grandparents are starting to follow because they're downsizing, whatever. This type of housing, we're going to see more and more of it, and there's a huge future demand. The market hasn't wrapped its head around it yet. So in both cases, I feel like they're going to be very happy in 10 years when the market grows, and when this becomes more common and people appreciate it.
Let me add one thing. We had our another agent in our office had the same similar house where they had a house and the ADU was downstairs and they were separated, but they were listed as condos. Traditionally, you could go back to that duplex that you basically saw, buy the duplex and buy the other part and like get part of the rent applied towards your mortgage amount, right? So that used to be the way. And now that they're condos, there isn't a mortgage or a lending package that's good for that, right? So if you have this much to spend, do you really want to buy the house that money spends, not this house plus maybe a rental downstairs. So just there isn't a lot of things that tie them all together right now.
Or you just want to buy the ADU. There are a lot of people who,
Right.
that's what they can get.
Well, on that duplex, would that be considered 2 condos or would they be?
That you could, that one is probably fee simple, so separate tax parcel,
Okay.
as opposed to this, which.
But if they were together, then you might potentially be able to get a loan to buy both of them and apply the rent towards that.
Right. Okay, anyway, let's keep going here. Okay, so a bunch of like, these are very, very generic kind of boxes that just kind of model what is potentially possible. We're gonna see a lot of what we've seen in the last 10 years, or let's say, take that back. We didn't see a lot of townhouses in low-rise, in part because of mandatory housing affordability, which is a city program that charges developers basically, $20 to $30 per square foot, and then puts that in a slush fund for affordable housing. At this scale, where you only have 4 units, it's a bit of a penalty, and so therefore, what we've seen in the last 10 years, or last 8 years, lots of these 3-packs that are not subject to MHA, and very few townhouses that were subject to MHA. So right now, we have this kind of imbalance where we've rezoned all of the NR, all the neighborhood residential areas, to allow for more units than the zone next door to it that was supposed to be the next step up. So all the low-rise areas right now are kind of just in a holding pattern until they also get rezoned. So, but, because nevertheless, what you used to be able to do in low-rise, in like urban centers, is now what you can do on any parcel in Seattle. So, 4 units, the FAR, the floor area ratio, is a little under 1.2, that's the max, so about 6,000 square feet on a 5,000 square foot lot. Let's go to the next one. This is another map of where they expect the different kinds of development to happen. So you can see lots of these townhouses, these attached houses, lots of them. That's the biggest concentration of new development that they expect. And look at that hot blue spot right where we're standing. So they expect a lot of that to be occurring in our neighborhood. Let's see, go next slide. A quibble with the urban design of townhouses as we have them. They oftentimes, on the left, this is what this is what is left. There's not much open space, right? There's no side yard. There's very little side yards. There's very little gap between these structures. These side yards are useless, and also there isn't much kind of like character to the alleyways as well. And so we've ended up kind of eliminating all of our backyards, but with the thought that what we're actually preserving is, or that rather than just having row houses that like form a continuous edge and they just go from wall to wall, we've created these little, we've wasted all this space creating little gaps between them that are effectively useless. So, not only is the space on the outside kind of marginal, inside it's also marginal. There's a lot of 12, 14, 16 foot wide townhouses that are mostly stairs. And it's not something that as I'm getting older, I definitely don't wanna live in a 3-story townhouse. I also, don't wanna live on in a unit that has, you know, 1 room per floor. Super hard with kids. And then you're also greeted by the joy of living amongst, you know, a bunch of other tiny detached, sort of milk carton formed buildings that are all like, I just love this, I love this particular listing I just downloaded. Every bedroom, every window in the listing, like there was, the view was of another
4 other
townhouse.
windows.
Yeah, it was a little bit creepy.
It's great if you need a cup of sugar.
Yeah. 'Cause anyway, so like these are, and part of it is because we're afraid to go lot line to lot line. So if I had one request for all you to like engage with your city council members in this period where we're about to rewrite the zoning code for low rise, it's just get rid of those little side yards, because then every unit is going to be you know 2-3 feet wider, and by not having those windows on the side, it forces us as designers to put all the windows out onto the street or into the backyard, where you actually have aspect, where you can actually plant a tree, where you can actually see the street.
It's amazing how, like, more and more people are approaching us for valuation requests and asking us to jump in. Everybody's getting these letters about, like, I'll buy your house and whatever. And one of the biggest things that's come up is lot width. And the utility of your lot, what can be built there, is so dependent on these setback limits. This would really, again, open it up where people who are selling houses that are ripe for development could be doing better, and the end result would be infinitely better for.
Can I ask about the trees?
Yeah.
I know it used to be they were very strict about the trees, right? You can't cut down a tree that has a certain diameter. You have to accommodate that, or you have to replant trees. So we're expanding these lot lines and the setbacks and things of this kind. Are there, obviously those restrictions have to be, you know, released, right? Are they, what's happening with that? With the trees?
Yeah, so first of all, every development is built or has to plant new trees. So it's even, and that's whether they cut down anything or not. Every low-rise development, basically every single family or like kind of like townhouse now, also replacing street trees or planting street trees, and also trees on site. Whenever a tree gets cut down, they offset that or have to pay into a fund. It never feels exactly right, because, you know, the tree that you plant, you cut down a tree that's big and you plant, you know, a tree that's this big. But, it's kind of like the pendulum has swung a little bit back, in that now, the area in which you are, if you were to draw a circle that is the drip line of the tree, and then you come back a little bit, those areas are effectively no-go zones now. So in a lot of ways, unless that tree precludes the development because it is like right in the middle, there are a lot more controls that lead development to have to like zigzag around trees now. So it is not like developers can just like cut everything down. There's more controls, and they're planting trees.
What about a tree that is sick, right? It's not terrible, like half the western red cedars in West Seattle are sick.
Yeah.
Right, so are we like hanging on to them, or what? I mean, that's a specific tree, but I'm not expecting that you might know that, but I'm just wondering, generally, if a tree is sick, you know, or it's not very healthy, it's not like it's gonna fall over. Western red cedars could, you know, are just not gonna fall over, right? But they're not well.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, also,
We have two western. Probably
You,
like to build on. So.
you're also now compelled to have an arborist report on almost every project. So the tree's health is going to be assessed, and they're going to, if it's bad, then that's going to allow for it to be taken down, but if not, then they're gonna draw that area that's the no-go zone for development and construction.
As we're transitioning from townhouses to stacked flats here, are there different incentives for breaking up a lot, breaking up to incentivize doing stacked flats or disincentivize doing those tall skin milk carton townhouses with the new developments in the code?
The incentives have a lot to do with, well, I guess we'll talk about these, because there's a lot of incentives. But the incentive with townhouses is now you can do unit lot subdivisions. You used to be able to just do a condo association amongst the dwellings on one parcel, so you would all share ownership, but now you can actually create separate properties. So you still need an HOA, but the HOA is not like, doesn't own the land. Anyway, so this is a different way of approaching density altogether. So these are stacked flats. This is a development that I did in Spokane, where about 3 years ago they just said, we have a housing emergency, we need to like incentivize more development, so we're going to allow for bigger buildings to be in our neighborhood residential zones. And so this replaced a really beat down old bungalow, and you can see that it has a single stairway. Each one of those units is about 1,000 square feet. It's 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. You have light on 3 sides. You're not necessarily looking at any of your neighbors. You have a big giant porch because they also legislated that porches could essentially be in the front yard setback. They were free. Whereas now our code allows only 1-story porches to be, and they can only be a certain size. So if in the future you see a big apartment building with one little stupid little entry porch over a doorway, it's because they were afraid to allow you to have big porches. Yeah, so anyway, so this is 6 units, and it fits in this historic neighborhood really well. This is no bigger than what Seattle currently allows a house to be. So you could build a structure this big and just have one family in it, but I prefer to have this is a great walkable neighborhood right next to Manfield Park. Lots of people should be able to have the opportunity to live here.
And next to the hospital too, right?
Yes, in fact, our tenants, we thought we'd get families because they're 2-bedroom units, doctors and nurses, and retirees. So no families whatsoever, but people that work down at the hospital. So people that could buy a house opted for this template, in part because of walkability, also accessibility. The ground floor units are ADA accessible. So
Is there an elevator?
there is not an elevator, no. There's never going to be an elevator because elevators are insanely expensive, and there is a cabal of elevator manufacturing companies that want to keep it that way. So I'm sorry, there will not be an elevator in any of these buildings that you ever. Yeah. A state law just pretty much died trying to allow for smaller elevators, less expensive elevators. Just effectively died. So
If you would like to see them still happen, feel free to bother your reps about SB 5156 as many times as you can on the phone and bug them about it.
yes, I think it's dead, but yeah. Okay.
And
keep going.
still a third of these are accessible, right?
Yeah, which is more than none. The other thing about this, 2 of these units are workforce housing, so they are reduced rent. And this is all from a market perspective. So if you can build something that has enough density, you can afford to have more accessible units and more affordable units. And those are capital A affordable, not just less expensive. The other ones are also less expensive. Just some interiors, you can see there are windows in every room. How many apartments have windows in the kitchen these days? how many apartments have windows? I don't know if you've been in any apartments recently, but you know, how many windows in bathrooms do you see? Almost never. And this kind of template of stacked flats allows for much more livable house-like floor plans.
How big is that? How big is the outside to outside?
It's a half of a 40-foot footprint, so 20 feet wide.
So those are permitted now under the new zoning?
Yeah, and a little bit more. So let's talk about some things that now, when you start to add up all the incentives, you can start to do buildings that, like even like what I was showing in Spokane only works in Spokane. Doesn't work where our land cost is twice what it is in Spokane. So we need more density or more height or more mass in order to make the economic equation work. So what does that look like? So in this case, I'm just like throwing out what is the most you could possibly build. This is not an architecture, this is not a design, but if you add up the stacked flat bonus, you get extra lot coverage. If you save a tier 2 tree, you get a little bit extra FAR. If you have type A affordable accessible units, those are fully accessible units. And you have big balconies, it produces the open area. You can get to something that has, on a Seattle 5,000 square foot lot, 11 2-bedroom, 2-bath units.
On how many floors?
On 4 floors.
And so then you've got another one of those buildings across the street. What good is a balcony? You're just looking at another building through their
I mean,
window.
across the street is 70 feet away, so that's pretty far. As opposed to a townhouse where you have a window that is 10 feet away. It's a big difference.
And there's enough like space for greenery there that could potentially be like covering some of the balconies, it seems.
Sure. Yeah, these balconies are as big as those ones in the stack flat that I was just showing. So these are room-sized balconies.
Yeah. You said 11 units, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 4 floors.
Yep.
How many accessible ones are there?
Do we need unit
3.
and no parking needed?
Yeah. I did not do, let's see. For the most part, I just did, because of this is, I didn't do parking, because parking messes up everything.
Yes, it does.
So, this is more about like what the sort of extreme maximum size is if you do all the things that the city is trying to incentivize, right? More accessible, more affordable, less expensive overall, saving trees, having more open space per unit. All these things are things that we've decided are sweeteners that we want to have on new housing too. None of these things townhouses do. Yeah.
You mentioned in the past that the height limit was increased to 42 in certain cases.
Yeah.
And this is a 4-story, I suppose is the same.
Yes.
Does that go through the international building code now?
Yes,
So
these are
two means
all-
of egress now?
These are all, yes, they're all under the International Building Code, so it costs about 15 to 20% more to build per square foot. But in Seattle, we can build up to 6 stories with a single stair. So these all just show a single stair.
So there'll be
But
one
sprinklers.
for the whole building.
One, well, in this case, let's go to the next case.
Yeah.
So, this is the same building, but thinking about condominium ownership. So there are fewer units, they are larger. So you can imagine downsizing to something that is 1,200 square feet from a house, maybe you're, that's the size of my house, but other, you can imagine like selling your house, you want less maintenance, you want to be closer to the junction. You could get a 1,200 square foot condo, essentially, in a new building that shouldn't have any sort of maintenance problems, and save some money, and then also kind of leverage all those sort of life benefits. Once you start to do something at this scale, and it's at market, then maybe it can pay for an elevator. So this one does have an elevator, but I think that the price point is not, this is not big A or little a affordable housing. This is more of a luxury product in order to buy the elevator.
And this is on a current 5,000
Yep.
square foot?
How many units?
Sorry, 5,000.
This is seven units, 3-bedroom, 2 bath.
Already at 5,000 total lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's another different question. The previous one, people don't ever wanna own something smaller?
I mean,
Is it,
I think yes. In
Yeah.
fact, wait.
okay.
Oh my God, yes. Did you set this up? This
Sorry,
is,
yeah, I knew
this
the
is
next
ex-
slide went down.
so Seattle's Habitat for Humanity has in fact been building 3- and 4-story buildings that are all ownership, where people are owning a 1-bedroom flat, and there are 12 or 16. So they built 2 of these in Seattle, and this is now available on just about any lot. So there's no speculative pressure on the very few LR zone parcels. They could build this almost anywhere. The benefit of having our zoning changes be so broad is that the rate of change on 81 block is going to be slow. It's not like everything is going to happen all in one 4-year period. But here, 16 1-bedrooms, same kind of size. Again, this is 4 stories. I'm not making any, I'm truly exploring the maximum of what these incentives would allow.
Let's say 88 does not count against FAR.
Yes, so theoretically, if you are building fully accessible units, they don't count towards lot coverage, they don't count towards density, and they don't count towards FAR. So that would be bathroom, like countertops that are set lower, that you can get around with a wheelchair.
What doesn't count for that, the square footage?
Yeah, so in theory, you could build a building that is all accessible units,
Yeah,
and have it be not infinitely tall, and you're still set by the setbacks. However, it's not controlled. So they really want to incentivize accessible units, and so they made them essentially free.
Yeah, get like a free floor for the rest of your building.
Yes. So, yeah.
Still an HOA though, right?
In this case, someone like Habitat for Humanity still owns the building and handles the transfer of deeds whenever somebody goes to
So
sue.
what's the difference, advantage between condominium ownership and this?
Well, because these could be restricted. Oh wait, go back to the last one. Habitat for Humanity is setting the housing price, so they can fundraise, reduce the construction cost, then pass the savings on to a population of people who wouldn't be able to afford anything else
So
on
it's
the market.
Big A.
Big A, yeah. Big A, small apartment.
Yeah.
And then because Habitat still owns the building,
Right.
then whenever
They can
a unit,
control.
whenever a unit, you go to sell your unit, generally you get some appreciation.
Right.
If not, you can't buy it and then sell it for market. And therefore you have permanently affordable housing in neighborhoods, which is one of the things that we all said that we want more of.
Yeah.
So, okay, last one. The other wrinkle in this code is now you can include some commercial space, like corner stores in NR. So corner stores are viable. There's also a wrinkle that we can build a child care center pretty much anywhere in NR. Now, one of the things that we do quite a bit is early learning centers, child daycare centers in the bases of those big buildings. Remember my capital A affordable project that has a daycare center on the main floor. We can do that now anywhere also in neighborhood residential. So small flats above, and then in this case, 2 classrooms of daycare. Once you do this twice next to each other and make the space between them, the commons, the joint playground, then that 4 classroom daycare is the ideal size for most providers. And then those units, in this case 12 units on each one of those, that's also a really good size for a nonprofit. So below this scale, it doesn't make sense, but we are approaching where the economics work, and these are going to be unicorns. There'll be like 1 built in the next 30 years. So we don't have to worry about this happening townhouses are gonna make so much money.
So we want row houses.
So, until we fix the side yard thing, row houses are, they're always gonna be, like along this street, right? There are townhouses that face the street, but there are gaps. We're just gonna have that pattern everywhere.
So who's behind any kind of petition or?
I just came back from NYC and DC, so.
Yeah.
And they're
Come talk to me
beautiful,
after.
and they make so much sense, and it's like, why are we not here? So
Yeah,
we need to work on it, and I don't even know who to call, you know?
yeah. There are people in this room who are actively working on it,
Okay.
and I am too, so. Okay, let's see, next, I think. Oh, the last thing that I am sure is going to happen is that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, people downsizing out of single-family houses. You know, they have a 4,000 square foot house in Seward Park. They don't need that anymore. But if next door they could get a 1,500 square foot luxury flat, they would do that. And like take that nest egg and spend it on something else.
Elevator?
So-
No elevator.
At this price point, so we were working, we developed these sketches for a developer who is like, well, all the upstairs units have their own elevator. So,
Multiple elevators.
yeah, so the idea is that this is another mode. So this is like, you don't want to buy a luxury house on the market. You don't want a flat. You're willing to spend more. So it's the cheapest form of housing for the luxury sector. So I would expect some of these to happen. They're going to be smaller. You know, there's no reason to go to 4 stories, but they're going to have 10-foot, 12-foot ceilings.
But if each one has its own elevator, is there a common walkway that you walk in and you see a bank of 4 or 6 elevators? Or I'm having a hard time visualizing
It
this.
would probably be a lot, like this is a 4-plex. So 2 of the units, the 2 upstairs units would have elevators. So there'd probably be 2 doors.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess the takeaway here is it's a bit of the Wild West. You're going to see all sorts of variants. The code is written in a way that it creates incentives, and at this point, I'm not sure which incentives are going to be the most powerful. There's going to be lots of townhouses. There are going to be lots of people that do what looks like a row home. There's going to be duplexes, and there are going to be the very rare bird like me who wants to build stack flats. So, I think that might be the last slide. Yeah. Okay, I wish one. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
So we really appreciate having Matt here. This is a real luxury for us. I think it's awesome. I just wanted to say, we love doing stuff like this. We had both the terror and opportunity that came with the pandemic. Our lease was up and we were in a not awesome space, and when we came here, everybody learned to work from home. And if you've walked by here at all, you probably know we're not really here, because if we're busy, we're out in the field with our clients. We designed the space to be a meeting space, to be a living room. It works great for a 10-person meeting. The water polo club from the high school came here, asked us if they could use the space to interview their new coach. So we want to continue to do things like this. This conversation is awesome and timely and important. But we're going to do others. We're going to do more events like this. If you enjoyed this and you want us to do more, please make sure you eat at least 1 cookie, maybe 3. I don't want to take them home. And just thanks to Matt. This is great. I'd love to point out the West Seattle Realty people in the room, Robert Kelly, Haley, and Tracy in the back there snuck in. If you have questions about real estate, one thing that I want to incorporate in, because this has become a bigger part of what we're doing right now, and I think it's also important. Development is really hard from a very practical standpoint in what we're doing. Everybody
everybody that's in these zones is getting letters, they don't know what to do. Developers have built an industry around where they're, in the industry we call them dirt dogs. There are people who specialize in figuring out what can be done on a lot, and they sell that concept to a developer, say, hey, we could do this, whatever. And then they go shopping for a lot that fits that description. And I always refer to it as, it's like electricity. It's the least path of resistance, right? Where can they make the most money? And it oftentimes requires finding somebody that is naive, vulnerable, desperate, I guess that's vulnerable too, in the people in the room that are also doing advocacy. And I've talked to Matt about this. I think this is going to be my passion for the next decade, is finding a way to help promote some of this development in places that are not where they can get the best deal, but where they make the most sense. And doing it in a way that doesn't require the developer to take advantage of the landowner.
Yeah.
And we have to do, it has to, I mean, there's so many things right now. I'm have these clients more and more, and the other thing is, I've been a real estate agent for 23 years now. I've worked through the Great Recession. I've been through where we achieved the lowest ever youngest age for home ownership of first-time home buyers were in their 20s. And at that same time, we had the highest percentage of home ownership in the history of the country, only to go into the Great Recession and watch so many people get really hurt. I have real reservations about condos. Matt and I debate this all the time. Right now, baby boomers are retiring. T. Rowe Price did a white paper on the average baby boomer. 82% of their net worth is residential real estate. They're basically retiring on what they've made in real estate. And it's a huge part of what we do as real estate brokers, is help try and set people up for long-term success. Condos kind of don't help that. They don't appreciate the same way. They add levels of bureaucracy. We want to be real advocates of getting the right projects in the spots that we need them, that are close to transit, that aren't adding other burdens on our system. So there's amazing opportunities for advocacy. And my wife and I literally just got back from New York 2 days ago, and we're in DC before that, a couple days before that. And you can see the difference. New York is so dirty. It's, amazing place if you like urban, right? But DC had so much more green space, and part of it is the row houses and 8 stories, not 6. The growth needs to happen, and it needs to happen in some of these great conversations. I hope that it's happening in a balanced way and is going to continue to be smart.
Speaking on that same line, I've been in West Seattle my life, 4th generation Seattle area person. So I've been here a long time, and I see so many and know so many older people that have owned their homes. And like you said, that's what their main equity and their main retirement is at home. The appreciation I got from the home. And I'm wondering if are there any development groups that are out there here in Seattle that are working with those homeowners, like almost like partnering with them? Like now we've got all of this great density, which I'm totally for. I love it. I'm not Emmett Watson. I think it's great that we're growing. But wouldn't it be great if there were some developers that would sort of partner with those folks, where they could actually develop their property, and the person could actually get more money from just selling their house, which, like you say, they're going in there trying to find vulnerable little people that are going to sell it for nothing, or whatever, or not what it's worth. Right, but then develop it, and then they get a little slice of it. But then maybe the developer doesn't have to purchase the property.
That's exactly what, part of what we're doing is now being, like bringing the homeowner, the property the sale price of your land, but then you also get the development profit. And you get to control the development, and then you can use that to buy one of the units and help guarantee the success of those.
It-
And neighborhoods, you downsize.
Yeah. There's two stories I want to share about this that I think are super important. The other thing that happened in the Great Recession is basically every single small builder died. They got crushed in the Great Recession, and it took them forever to come back. And now they're trying to develop in a system that is very much stacked against them for a lot of these reasons, right? The cost of acquiring the land, the cost of a construction loan, and these ideas of partnerships where the people who already own the land and are totally open to increased density, next generation neighborhoods, all these things, they could be partnering in a way that would help builders with their carrying costs, whatever. And right now we're in an environment where small builders are absolutely over a barrel and kind of being held down by the financiers of these properties. And it's ultimately thwarting urbanization of neighborhoods and responsible urbanization of neighborhoods. The other thing I wanted to say is I have a client who I help them buy houses. He and his partner, probably one of the smartest guys I've ever worked with. And they just wanted a simple 1,200 square foot house in a specific neighborhood. That was Wallingford at the time. They got the house and they got upzoned from residential, this is 10 years ago, to LR3 in one zoning change. And all of a sudden, their neighbor buys the other neighbor, and then the neighbor on the other side of that buys that. And they're literally watching this happen. The guy was an actuary. He does math for a living. Like, he's watching this whole thing happen and felt totally out of control. So the other thing I would love to see is, like, when there's these big shifts in zoning, that there's more of an opportunity for neighbors to work together, as opposed to ending up with the up house, which is a really cool pizza shop, right? But not ideal for the neighborhood, for the location, or the property owner. We gotta find a way, and these are opportunities for the government to come in and have a tremendously positive influence on how this development happens, without people getting taken advantage of.
What's your question? How much thought is in this planning is put into the people who live on the street that's going to be impacted? And I don't know about a lot of people here in West Seattle, but we came from Capitol Hill. One of the reasons was for the views, so we could see the water and the mountains. And so what they're gonna do is put us in a canyon of shadows and take away our views. And I know you're not supposed to talk about the views, but that's my question. Just let me, okay, go ahead. So I just wanna know how much thoughtfulness is put into that.
Well, I mean, this process took almost 5 years. So, and there were what, like probably 50,000 comments, from over those 5 years. So this has not been fast. As I said, I started the Planning Commission 5 years ago with the idea that I wanted to see the end of the comprehensive plan, and it's still we're like halfway through it. And so the idea that these are not considered, you could not like the outcome, but they are carefully considered.
Can I would just like to address the group. We live on the corner of 39th and Morgan, the northeast corner of 39th and Morgan, and currently the council is deciding whether or not we are a corridor to be rezoned for LR2 housing. It's a mature residential street, like the streets you all live on, I'm sure. And only the west side of our street would be allowed 4 floors of development. So there are approximately 30 houses on 39th, and all the houses on the west side of the street could potentially become 4-floor high-rises. So my question is, what is the definition of corridor? And we've written to council, and I've gotten a little bit of information, but can you expand on what is the criteria that determines what is a corridor, because if our 39th Avenue Southwest is determined to be corridor, then every mature, quiet residential street in West Seattle could potentially become designated corridor for that kind of development.
Well, your land also can do four stories, so there isn't an
No,
imbalance.
only the west side of
No,
our
well,
street.
you have an NR lot, right? Across from what will eventually be LR2. That's what you said? It's like, yeah.
It's been proposed, we learned on February 4th from a contractor who lives on the east side
Mhm.
of 39th Avenue, which is the side we live on, that only the west side, so perhaps he's misled,
Well, what I'm
but the
saying,
entire neighborhood is gathering to, in these opposition meetings, to oppose that kind of zoning.
well,
So,
what I'm saying is your lot has already been upzoned to an equal height.
so every lot on the east side, so we've been misinformed by our neighbor?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, every lot in
It's kind
Seattle,
of a mess right now.
yeah.
Huh? Every lot in
Every lot,
Seattle is now in our.
every 75,000 lots that are, if you use some of these bonuses.
So all the peach-colored areas of your map
Yes.
are now potentially four-floor
If you
construction?
build stacked flats that are affordable, that save trees, that do.
Does West
do-
Seattle understand that? That
Uh,
every
I would
residential
think if I were-
neighborhood in West Seattle is
So, yeah,
They should come to the.
And that's why
We were
there's,
the only
it's been a
victims.
4-year process.
So when you have an NR
Every
and an LR3,
residential
the
house.
big difference is the density in the farm, not necessarily the height, or is there a difference?
No, what I'm saying is right now, LR hasn't been upzoned at all,
Okay.
but NR has been upzoned to
Okay.
match it.
Okay,
So there's effectively everywhere across the city
okay.
is the same.
But does the LR have a different farm?
The base FAR is 2.
Okay.
So, so you would be able to do the biggest, it's gonna be similar in bulk.
But yeah,
So I guess my point is, zoning always creates winners and losers. But we absolutely have to upzone in order to deal with our affordability problem, with all the people that are coming here.
I'm sure we voted
And-
for high-density dwelling.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it, but it
and-
didn't occur to me that our entire street could be wiped out by a four-floor construct over the course of the next 20 years.
I mean,
One of the things though is you can put those anywhere in the city, so there's no reason to put them all on one street. There's gonna be one here and one here, like they won't be concentrated like that. 'Cause it
Yeah.
just-
Well, if
And if-
the
and if
neighbors
anything-
sell, right?
if
I
anything,
mean,
right
what-
now,
Some
the-
neighbors are gonna say, no, I don't wanna block my neighbor's view, I don't know about that.
so right now, your house and the house across the street
Mhm,
can build roughly the same size. The one across the street
mhm.
is subject, every square foot will be subject to a $20 or $30 per square foot MHA payment. So there's actually less incentive right now.
I was gonna say, that's a lot of
To-
money.
Yeah, if you're building 6,000 square feet, that's $900,000. So, so there is a huge penalty for building an LR right now. So the fact that they're upzoning that street until they fix MHA, I don't think anything's gonna happen on across the street. It's more likely you or your neighbor.
I think, kind of coming full circle in the conversation, the change in the growth is challenging and impacts different people different ways. What we tell people all the time, because this question comes up, somebody's buying a house, and they're like, well, what's gonna happen to my view corridor or whatever? These are actual conversations that happen all the time. And they're very valuable to the person buying that piece of property, and it impacts their value. I think the couple of things Matt said that are hard to kind of put into practice is that the price of a specific property and what they can do with it are huge obstacles. And so, to some degree, some of the changes have been very broad because we need this to happen for the number of people moving to the area. Where it's going to happen is going to be really rare. It's not going to be, in few cases, we're gonna have neighborhoods that just absolutely turn over. My
But there's
client
no
that bought.
guarantee of that. That's your opinion.
So-
That's not a guarantee.
Sure.
You're
nothing is guaranteed.
absolutely right, and but this is what I was trying to say is the economics are incredibly limiting. The economics of that particular situation, the chance of that happening and for that to be a reality, it's just not there. And developers are in business to make money. So that's like, they're going to go somewhere where they can build and make more money.
That's right, with view property.
Well, I was
that
gonna
block
say,
the other
39th has an extraordinary view, so,
Sure.
you know,
I
the
know
west side of
exactly
the
what
street
block
can
you're on.
block all the, and provide 4 floors of views. It seems
Yeah, but-
illogical that some residents would lose their view and the value of their property so that 5 times as many residents could have a gorgeous view. I mean,
Yeah, but
what's the
then-
logic in that?
But as soon as that happens, then the next block's gonna happen, and the next block's gonna happen, and everything becomes kind of that urban corridor. Again, it's gonna happen really slowly,
Sure.
just because of the economics, not because it couldn't happen. If somebody like, I think it was New York Times just did an article last week about Irvine, California, and how like they literally just dropped it out of the sky and built Irvine. They built a university. If you've toured the university, it's like shockingly master planned. Like everything was thought about, and it's awesome. And the entire city, right? And there are billionaires out there that are looking for desirable piece of property where they can drop this master plan city in. But it's all about the economics, and that's not ever gonna happen in Seattle because the land is already too expensive.
I want to leave here understanding that the entire West Seattle now has been zoned corridor for
Well, if I
urban
can answer that question,
development.
it's a
Is
transit
that what
corridor.
it is?
It's because you're close to the sea line. The rapid ride bus lines are transit corridors. We only have one I guess 2 in West Seattle.
So
We have the
between
C&H.
35th and down to Fauntleroy, every street,
It's within like a block or 2 of a bus.
Yeah, so 21 also qualifies.
okay, so not all of West Seattle, just
No.
But
homes that are within a half, because then no parking is necessary for the development because there is a,
That's the idea, yeah.
yeah,
right.
and
Yeah,
and
I'm starting to get it.
I took it out of this presentation, but the area in Seattle where you don't need to provide parking, and granted, the market will almost always provide parking, is more than half the city.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like it's just like one block. It's,
Right.
except for here where we don't have great bus service, if you look at a map that has that layer on it, it's like almost all of the center part of Seattle, except for maybe the maybe mile between here and the water. So, but nevertheless, developers are always gonna build parking. They're not, townhouses without parking are not selling. Apartments that don't have parking are really, really incredibly rare. So even though it's not required, doesn't mean it's not gonna happen.
So I would say,
Thank you so much for the insight.
I built backyard cottages, and, you know, Queen Anne was notorious for trying to slow the roll of all the development changes back in 2019. And the economics of Queen Anne, in my 7 years of building backyard cottages, I've had one lead on Queen Anne. All over Ballard, all over Northeast, Genesee Park, down here in West Seattle, all over the place, and the economics of Queen Anne just made it such that nobody was really interested. They go buy a second house if they need a backyard cottage. So it didn't even matter. Another question I had is, does the new zoning allow for somebody who's owned their house for a long time to sell their backyard?
Yes. So, and the way that works, there's so the state has now allowed for what's called a blanket across the state, unit lot subdivision. So if you have a regular parcel, let's just say that it's 5,000 square feet, you can divide that under certain rules into smaller tax parcels. So, so part of what selling your backyard could mean is that you could like divide your lot with a unit lot subdivision and sell that back. You really have, in that case, you have to permit that plan, or get a building permit before you can split it. However, it's totally possible in the old days, like, last year,
Yesterday.
you can only do that via a condo association.
Yeah.
Where the ownership of the land is held in common, and each person owns their individual household.
But that's one of the ways for older family or older couple that's still living there, they've lived there 40 years, they own it clear and clear, they don't owe anybody anything, they could sell the backyard, take that equity, turn their equity in their backyard into cash money, and maybe participate in the construction of something.
And this is exactly that template, where if you own your land without a mortgage, because if you sell half of it and you still have a mortgage, the bank is not gonna be very happy.
No, they won't.
But if you own it pretty clear, then, there's no way to make that liquid but you could collaborate with the developer. You would hold the land, that land would be part of your contribution. And then when they sell that, sell the house that they built on that, you would get the proceeds and the cost of the land basis.
Or design one of the sides of the duplex for the older couple to
Yeah,
live in.
and move into it.
The old house with rattly windows and no air conditioning and shitty insulation, is sold as the front house to a new, younger couple or something, and you get 3 people on one lot.
Is there still a minimum size, to those subdivisions within NR?
No. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's really interesting. We've had more and more people approaching us. I worked with a client for a year and a half that was approached by a developer. It's a very unique situation, but they had an oversized lot, and they came to them with a draft proposal of, I can build 3 row houses for Susan in the backyard, and sell the backyard and whatever, and it went back and forth for a year and a half, and then the developer pulled the rug out from under them at the last minute, so I can only do this for 25% less, and blah, blah, blah. And that project's now not gonna happen, and it's in a great spot for it, but again, it's like, I'm excited about the new change to the smaller lots not needing to be condos, so that will actually facilitate this a little bit better. And I'm looking forward to being able to one of the things that I know Matt worked on really early was pre-approved plans for dados, which made the backyard cottages so much easier. So an architect can say, here's a dadu, here's a backyard cottage, ready to go. It's already been approved by City of Seattle to be put anywhere. All you need to do is fit it to the lot, and they rubber stamp it, and boom, here's your building permit, go. I'm hoping that there's more opportunities for this, like if you hit X criteria, and they'll be much easier to understand, whatever, that we can get to the spot where people will have a much better understanding of what their backyard is worth, what can be built there, and it can be templatized and work quickly. The building that Matt worked on in Spokane, what do you call it, the Spokane 6 or whatever?
Yeah,
it is such it just checks so many boxes and is easy, and they solicited investors to come in and help, that model is something that could be templatized and built in lots of places and make it easy for people to get on board with.
I think so, a fair amount of developers that I've spoken with, this MHA is a huge problem. Is there any appetite in the city at all to change some of that, to maybe the percentages, bring those percentages lower?
I would say,
Change those parameters?
I'd say the probability is low. I think it has to get worse before they will really approach it. Because it has effectively wiped out all townhouse production in Seattle for the last 5 years. Granted, all that moved into the 3-packs. What we've also seen is the revenue from that project, from MHA, has also dropped. It used to be, it was, the first year was like $57 million. Yay, that's a lot. Now it is 20, less than 20, and we have Jumpstart and also the housing levy. So MHA now is 10% or 5% of our overall housing budget.
Is that because developers don't want to build because of it? Is that like suppressing the appetite for building, or it's just not?
It's the path of least resistance. If
It's
I
the
can build,
profitability.
if I can build 3 and now 4 units
And not have to.
and not have that, why would I go across the street?
Spend $1 million.
Why would I go across the street and build in a zone where I pay this premium? So,
But if the city's wanting more density, you think that they would try to incent that?
yeah, but
It's-
Alright, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
I think there's a lot of thought that it's not worked exactly as we all thought it has. It's produced a lot of housing, in terms of the total number of units. I think they were trying to get to 6,000 units, and it's done that. But the byproduct is it's also killed sectors of builders.
So there was a report that the city commissioned last year that proposed some reforms, and I think totally abolishing the program is maybe not gonna happen, but there are some reforms
Yeah, that's
that
what I'm thinking.
I think we can
Yeah.
get the mayor on board.
It could be as simple as when you pay the fee.
Yeah.
Because if you, right now, you pay the fee when you pick up your permit. And you don't, if you're a developer, that's the worst time, because you don't get to reap the benefits or sell until 18 months later. But if we just move that fee to when you sell, and it's a component of the housing price on the market, then it's not a burden. And then you still get the benefit, however, there isn't this delay between it reaching its ultimate payer, the buyer.
And the dirty little secret there is the developer would probably be willing to pay more
Small project.
if they didn't have to pay it up front.
Oh, yeah.
So there's more money to be made. So I think the most important thing for me in doing this is to talk about why we need this, right? Why it's going to happen. How do we do it in a way that's harmonious with the neighborhood and works with people? And I think a lot of that is taking the mystery out of it. So regardless of what side of this you're on, I think taking a lot of the mystery out of it, having projects like the Spokane 6 that came together so beautifully and harmonious with the neighborhood, and all the parties are kind of working together for the common goal. Our country's in an incredibly divisive time. Being able to take some of the mystery out of this and pitch people very tangible ideas about how neighborhoods are gonna change, and what the net benefits of those are is so important right now, because we live here because West Seattle is awesome. I cannot believe when my wife went to grad school and was at UW and was living in Wallingford and Fremont, and I moved here to be closer to her, and on a whim somebody said, hey, have you checked out West Seattle? And I drove around the next day and I was like, this is incredible, this is amazing. And it has been such a great community, and hearing my kids talk about that and how important West Seattle is to how they perceive the world in their future lives. And then this density and affordability and all these things, it doesn't have to be scary, but it's important to the preservation of what is awesome about West Seattle.
So we've gotta get the people talking to each other.
Yeah, we gotta get the people talking to each other.
Yeah.
It's gotta be less mysterious, and it's gotta be less somebody can build a high-rise tower in the middle of the neighborhood. We can all do better about how that's
actually going to happen.
Homeowners don't trust the city because they're changing the code, they don't trust the developers because they want their property. I mean, you know, what the hell are we supposed to do? We gotta.
I mean, a lot of the affordability debate too is like, I'm not gonna lie, this house that literally is closing tomorrow that has a legal apartment in it, when I started in this business, the city was actively going after people that had apartments and making them rip the apartments out so that they couldn't be rebuilt. I'm not that, I am old, to ask my children, but I'm not that old. And then to see this like have gone full circle, at least one full revolution is crazy. And now we're in this very different phase, but I will tell you, the biggest obstacle to selling that house with an apartment is that nobody wants to be a landlord in Seattle.
Yep, that's right, that's right.
Nobody wants to be a landlord.
Right?
So like, if we want to create affordability, there needs to be balance in the force.
Okay.